Welcome, everybody. Happy Arbor Day, and welcome to our third session of Rice Creek Field Station and the Canal Forest Restoration Project's National Arbor Day webinar conference. I'm Kristen Haynes. I'm hosting this session. I am the Assistant Director of Rice Creek Field Station and also a team member of the Canal Forest Restoration Project housed at SUNY Oswego. So in this session, it's titled Trees and Life, touching on forest therapy and how trees can get us through difficult times. And we're really pleased to welcome Wendy Perrone. So Wendy is a certified forest therapy guide. She's operating in the Oswego, New York area. Wendy offers individual and group forest therapy sessions, and she actually offered one of these sessions to our students at SUNY Oswego during kind of the study time for finals at the end of last semester, and it was really well received by the faculty and the students who took part. So forest therapy, also known as Shinrin-yoku or Japanese forest bathing, it might be other names that people know it by. Wendy is a lover of nature, and she tries to spend as much time outside as possible. This is a very timely talk, we think, as you know, we all are dealing with kind of a very challenging time right now. So we hope that this helps those viewing it find greater health and well-being during what has turned out to be kind of a challenging spring. So with that, I will turn this over to Wendy.
Hi, welcome fellow dendrophiles and happy Arbor Day. Thank you to Kristen from Rice Creek and the Canal Forest Restoration Project for inviting me to speak during this. This is my first webinar I've ever done. So for me, it's a little different. This has become kind of the new normal now for everyone to be talking about the woods while sitting in their living rooms. So that doesn't mean we can't go out in the woods. So I want to make sure everyone still gets outside today if you can. It's a little gloomy here in Oswego, but still a good day to plant a tree or start working on those garden plans and staying as normally active as we can and being safe as well. As Kristen said, my name is Wendy Perrone. I do live here in Oswego, New York, not Oswego, Illinois, Oswego, New York. And I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up on a 17-acre property in a little village in Schenectady County called Delanson. Some people might have heard of it, some may not. I'd be shocked if you have. And I lived my life basically out in the woods. We had a black and white TV. There was no video games, no cell phones back then. We didn't even have a microwave. So for those of you that can't fathom all that, it is true. So we had to spend our days outside, and what better way than to climb the trees and use your imagination and be one with every part of nature that you can possibly be. I remember a big willow tree. I'd sit up on the branch and pretend I was riding the neck of a dinosaur. So all of these things gave me a wonderful escape in my childhood to just spend my days outside, no matter what time of year it was. If it was winter, we were digging, my brother and I were digging tunnels and creating forts among the trees. And, you know, the pine trees that have the weight of the snow on them would come down and build a natural fort. So I've always sort of lived amongst the trees. And for a few years after that, as you grow up, you know, life kind of gets in your way and you tend to forget a little bit about being able to play in the woods. You may have to work, go to college, finish school, get a job, have a family. All of those things happened to me. And I just started getting back into the woods a few years ago when I read an article in Prevention Magazine that talked about forest therapy guides. And I sat back and said, wow, this is something I can actually do for a living. And I was amazed by that. So I got a hold of the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides and Programs, otherwise referred to as the ANFT, which is a little bit easier than spitting out the whole title, and applied for their course and went to Ontario, Canada and took the course. It was a 10-day course. They do offer it all over the United States. And what this does is teach us a little bit about forest therapy and how I can guide people into the woods and what forest therapy is. And I'll go into explaining this a little bit more. Some people may refer to it as forest bathing. I tend to call it forest therapy because every time I say forest bathing, people think, do I go outside and shed my clothes and bathe in the forest? What's the deal? I encourage any way of getting into the forest. So if that's your thing and you want to strip down and go running through the forest, that's great. However, you don't need me as a guide to do that. What I do as a guide is I sort of create these invitations for you to get out of your head a little bit and get into liminal space. And with that, I may ask you to do maybe create an art project in the woods, maybe spend a few minutes and find a tree that's calling to you and go sit among its branches and its roots and connect with the tree. And when you're doing this, you notice that you're no longer thinking about the 5 loads of laundry that you have to do or the bills that you have to pay or, oh, I've got to go home and get my kids from the babysitter or whatever it may be that's constantly taking us away from the natural world and really creating this stressor. We don't, people just aren't grounded anymore. We aren't in a natural state. A lot of people don't, even on the walks that I go to now, and this is where I become important as a therapy guide, because even on some of the walks I take now, I see people that are walking along and they might be walking for exercise, which is okay, but they're not looking around them. They're not actually seeing what's out there. I discovered something the other day. I've always wanted to walk the Appalachian Trail. That has always been on my bucket list. However, it's not something I can take 6 months out right now to do. But I decided the other day that for me, that probably wouldn't be feasible because when I'm out in the woods, I like to explore. I mean, some of you may find an analogy in the movie Up when the dog with the computerized collars, look, squirrel, and he's looking, well, that's me. I look everywhere. I may see one thing and walk towards that and explore it. A minute later, I'm off the trail on the other side exploring. So I'm afraid that the Appalachian Trail might be better off without me because I would probably drop off a cliff somewhere exploring. But with that in mind, it gets us out there, and just to have the point of getting out there. So I refer to it as forest therapy. That is the general name that was brought to the United States from Amos Clifford, who started that association that I spoke of. It is a Japanese modality. And I will correct everyone that does this, including myself. When I first started, I pronounced it wrong as well because it's spelled Shinrin Yoku, but it's actually pronounced Shindin Yoku. So the R is a D pronunciation. So it's Shindin Yoku. And what this is, the Japanese decided that, and they have even more stressors than we do. They will go to work for maybe 18 hours a day, come home, eat dinner, go back to work at night. Kids go to a school program during the day, they go home and eat, and they go back to a school program at night. So they're constantly going. So they're even more not in touch with the natural world as we are. But the Japanese decided to take a scientific look into this. And what they did is before people went into the woods, they would swab their cheeks and they would test their cortisol levels, which is their stress hormones. And then after an hour or so in the woods, doing a therapy walk or just walking by themselves, looking at nature, listening to nature, they'd come out of the woods and they test the cortisol levels again. And they found that there was a significant difference from when they went in to when they came out. And, some of us might think, well, duh, nature is good for us. But to be able to prove it on a scientific level was amazing to them. So now they hold college classes in the woods. They hold Lamaze birthing classes in the woods. They do as much as they can under trees that they can. And trees are found everywhere. So there's no excuse for people not to get out and to be among the trees. I mean, New York City even has Central Park. So, I mean, you can find a tree somewhere to sit next to. And the reason why we focus on trees is because of what the trees put off. They put off an oil, they're called oils, they're called phytoncides. And what the phytoncides do for the tree is they let that off in a defense mechanism. So if there's a woodpecker pecking on a maple tree, that maple tree is going to let off these phytoncides to tell the other maple trees, hey, watch out, we've got somebody destroying me over here. You know, I've got an intruder. They'll put it off for any sort of disturbances. And those phytoncides have been proven to be what is beneficial to humans. And you're not going to feel them. This is, you know, microscopic particles that are dispersed through the air. But just the knowledge that they're there. And I often tell people as a reference, think about back in the late 1800s and early 1900s when there was the tuberculosis outbreak. I mean, we're still dealing with tuberculosis now, but back then, their way of helping people out was sending them to clinics in the Adirondacks, up in Saratoga, up throughout the Adirondacks, because the balsam firs cleanse the air. So they found that the air is so much better up there. And this helped, this helped people get over this. So what I do with the forest therapy walks, and a walk can be anywhere from 15 minutes to 3 hours, however long you want it. I usually don't go further than 3 hours because then either people are so spaced out or they just don't pay attention anymore and are lost in the woods, become lost in the woods. But what I do is I walk people through a standard set of sequence that we use to get you out of your daily mindset and start connecting. And before you know it, 3 hours can pass by and you won't even realize you were on a walk for 3 hours. I guarantee that because I hear it from every single person I take out. And in fact, I did a local festival last year and had 40 people attend that walk, which was amazing for me and to have that. So during the forest therapy walk, I will invite you to do certain things like I mentioned before. And this is something you can even do when you're inside the house and I've got a great one to do for you and your family or yourself, you know, during this time of isolation. If you can't get out today, it's cold and a little bit gloomy, so a lot of people will be in. Walk around your house and look and find 10 things that are associated to trees. And I guarantee it's going to be so easy. I could look in my living room right now and find 10 things that are associated with trees. And when you're done with 10, go up to 20 and see just how many, and maybe make a game out of it with your kids and challenge them, you know, maybe a little treat or you'll play a game with them after or do something. Who gets the most, you know, who finds the most products that are associated with trees. And this would be a great thing to do today. So I invite on these walks, again, I invite people to do certain, maybe connect to a tree that is calling to them. I invite them to say hello, which any way that works for them to that tree. Just sit there for a few minutes and see what they get, what they feel, maybe what they see, hear, taste, touch, you know, whatever. We're using all 5 senses to explore when we're doing forest therapy. And I'm not the therapist. The trees are. The forest is your therapist. I merely keep track of the time, guide you with a couple little invitations to maybe start you going. I make sure you're all present and you're all there and accounted for, so I don't lose somebody off a cliff somewhere. And this is the only things that I do. I don't ask any personal questions. I don't need to know any personal information. It's for you to get out, to ground yourself, to get back connected with nature and with these trees. And I have found that it has been so important for so many people to do this, especially now. There's no reason not to get out. You don't need a guide to get out right now because we are social distancing. You can get out on your own. Most of the trails are still open. Just stick to CDC's requirements and stay safe. I still go out in the woods. I even walked with a friend the other day. We stayed away from each other. We didn't wear masks. The wind was blowing. We got in about 2.5 hours and about 3 miles of walking. That was not a forest therapy walk. I do have to stress the forest therapy usually only goes about 100 yards at the most, because it's not meant as a hike through the woods. A naturalist walk is certainly something different that can be done. And that was more of what I did with my friend, pointing out the trout lilies that were coming up and that you could eat them, and pointing out more of the things along those lines, and the beautiful trees on the trail that we walked. So that was more of what we did. But with the forest therapy walk, it is open to any modality. If you're on crutches, if you're in a wheelchair, if you want to take your grandmother who's in a wheelchair to go on a walk, there are places we can do this to get them out as well, because everyone really needs to be outside and in nature at least once a week. Be nice if it was 20 minutes a day, but at least once a week to make an effort, especially now, because you'll realize that it'll keep you sane. There are too many people that I know that are just so concerned about coronavirus, in which we should be, but they're constantly monitoring their phones as to what the next thing is. And that can really, really affect a person's stress levels, worrying about this, overly worrying about this. So this is what I do for the forest therapy walks. At the end of the walk, I hold a tea ceremony. And what this tea ceremony does is it helps us to ingest kind of what we've been out walking under at the time. In other words, I make a light infusion tea from a plant on the trail where we're walking. I try to get a local plant, whether it be white pine or wild oregano, wild strawberry or something, and make a tea for everyone to enjoy with a light snack. And what this does is it brings us together as a community at the end, and it helps get us back out of that liminal space. Because after 3 hours, if you're still in that liminal space, I can't have you go drive home, because I don't want you staring at the trees as you're driving down the road. So we need to get you back into your body and back present, and more aware of where you are and what's going on. So that's the purpose of the tea ceremony. And it really becomes a nice circle, a nice tie-in at the end. And then a lot of people will discuss, if they want, how they felt, what they saw. When I took my class, I remember doing an invitation, and I walked under this beautiful big pine tree and just sat with the pine tree for a little while. And I remember hearing the pine tree say that it was really glad that humans had slowed down enough to look around and pay attention, because we don't do that enough. So I like to go and find an old tree and sit next to a really old big tree, because I like to picture what it is that that tree has seen in history. Could be 100, 200 years old, this tree. Just think of how many things this tree has seen, the people that have passed by, the animals that have leaned against it, scratched on it, maybe urinated on it, whatever. Just the life that this tree has seen has made these trees very wise, very wise. And trees, they give us everything. They give us shade. They give us sustenance, because some trees you can eat. The bark of a willow you can use for your migraines. And please, don't take what I'm saying and go out and start nibbling bark. Do your research. This is a little aside. Do your research. Make sure you're 150% sure of what you're doing before you start ingesting things out in the wild. I do my research. I don't just walk around picking up things and putting them in my mouth. The trees give us shade. They provide medicine for people. They provide warmth. We burn them in our fireplaces, for those of you that have a fire. We build our houses out of them. We have paper created from them, all sorts of different papers. There's so many things that trees do for us. And it's nice to celebrate that today and every day, in which I think we should celebrate it every day. Now I'm going to I'm going to try to talk while I'm doing this, but I want to share my screen. I'm going to share with you a slideshow of some of the adventures I've had out in the woods and some of the things I've seen. And maybe while you're watching this, you could pretend that these are your walks and you're seeing these things maybe for the first time, and just see what you make of it. See when you're watching this. It's not long. See what I was saying. And here we go. I'm not going to talk during this. Here we go. I hope you enjoyed that slideshow. I don't always take pictures because I see so many things. I don't like to be that distracted. I like to explore, like I said, and some things when you're out in the woods are meant for only your eyes, are not meant for everyone else. But I do take a lot of pictures when I can, especially when the spirit of a tree reveals itself to me. Now, before we go to maybe any questions that you guys have or comments, I'd like to share with you a non-denominational prayer of the woods that I found on Facebook the other day. I don't know the author, so if someone does know and they want to share, they can certainly share that with us. So this is called Prayer of the Woods, and I think this is very appropriate for today and for all days. I am the heat of your hearth on the cold winter nights, the friendly shade screening you from the summer sun, and my fruits are refreshing draughts quenching your thirst as you journey on. I am the beam that holds your house, the board of your table, the bed on which you lie, and the timber that builds your boat. I am the handle of your hoe, the door of your homestead, the wood of your cradle, and the shell of your coffin. I am the bread of kindness and the flowers of beauty. Ye who passes by, listen to my prayer. Harm me not. And of course, if you have any questions or I mean, we're going to answer questions here in a minute, but if you have anything that you want to contact me about or for a forest therapy walk, you can go to my website, pines4us.com. Just give me about a week. We had some technical difficulties and lost the site there. So give me about a week to put that back up.
All right, well, thanks so much, Wendy. Let me switch this view so people can see both of us. I think it's really interesting because I've been reading a little bit about forest therapy over this past year. There's a great book that I actually picked up in town at the River's End bookstore by Dr. Jing Li. But it really reviews a lot of the science behind forest bathing. And I think it's amazing to a lot of us. I think it's kind of astounding to me, just the huge degree of scientific study that has gone into forest medicine. And, I think as Wendy said, there are some benefits that are obvious, like we're getting vitamin D. We're maybe these physical differences, like we're absorbing, we're breathing in the phytoncides, and these are physical things. But we hear so much about mindfulness right now, and just being out in the forest and paying attention to what your five senses are telling you seems like a wonderful way to cultivate mindfulness. And Wendy, do you think that's where a lot of these benefits come from?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a completely different person in the woods. If I'm at home and I'm stuck inside and I'm doing a lot of things, I make sure I'm out in the woods. I try to get out 3 times a week at least to recharge myself because I just come alive when I'm out there. I'm smiling, I'm happy, I feel lighter. It just is tremendously important for my well-being to get out there. And if I feel that way, then I know it helps others as well, or can help others as well.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting that I think a lot of us intuitively understand that being outside helps us feel better. But how much more emphasis would we place on it if we all realized, I guess, the scientific backing of this, that basically, like, you and I have had discussions, and there's countries like Scotland and Japan where they've realized the importance of this to such a degree that forest therapy can be prescribed to people by a doctor.
Yes, and we're starting to make some progress with that here in the United States. More on the West Coast, they seem to be a little bit more ahead of us when it comes to alternative medicine, and this is where this association is based as well. But we are working on it. We are trying to get doctors to prescribe this because it is a real thing. It is backed by science. And another note, and I think I said this during our walk at Rice Creek, is in Norway. And I find this just incredible. Their advances in medicine and just knowledge beyond everyone else. In Norway, the construction workers, when they show up to work in the morning, they have to take their boots off, their socks off, and they have to stand for an hour on the ground and grounding because getting those electrons from Mother Earth help our body. And they've realized by doing this every day for the span of the worker, it has cut down on workers' compensation that they've had to do because of knee injuries and hip injuries for being on your feet all day long and doing this heavy labor. So I just find that fascinating. And I wish we did it more here in the United States.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially right now, and especially for our kids, for children, that this could be really essential for all of us managing right now. I failed to mention this at the start, but if anybody has questions for Wendy, you can use the live chat feature in YouTube and just type your question in there, send it. I'll be able to see it, and I'll be able to send your question to Wendy. You can also submit a comment. So I have a couple questions to start us off, but if you have a question about forest therapy or anything that Wendy had to say, just submit your question and we'll get to it. So let's see. One thing that I'm wondering about is if there are any families with rambunctious children who are interested in maybe practicing a little bit of forest therapy. Do you have suggestions for how you can do this with kids who might initially not be excited about, being quiet for long spans of time and that sort of thing?
Well, of course, a personal plug, you can always call me and I'll come guide a forest therapy walk for kids. But certainly, if you want to take them out now during the social distancing time, I thoroughly encourage everyone to get their kids out there. Getting out in the woods is not, you don't have to go for a hike. You don't have to go for 3, 6 miles with your kids, because I know little kids are not going to want to do all that. And you're going to end up carrying a whole bunch of kids on your back on the way back to the car. Get out, go 20 feet. Ask your kids to maybe let's make an art project. Everyone find some pine cones, some branches, make yourself a little art project or a couple. And then when you're done, share them with everyone and go around and to each kid and see what they're doing. I mean, it's very easy to come up with things to distract kids in the woods. Maybe have them stand there for a minute and look around and see if they see what's moving. Did they see a squirrel? Did they see a bird? Ask them what they hear. What's the closest noise they hear? What's the furthest away noise that they hear? Get their senses really involved. Maybe you can go to a little ditch, creek. I'm a country girl, so it's a creek. Go to the creek and put their hands in their water. And what do they feel? What happens when they move their hands around in the water? I mean, just getting them to not be wild and crazy and to think about something else, kind of a nice distraction.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, let's see, you did touch upon this, but I'm just wondering if you have any more specifics to offer for anyone who might live in an urban area, and how to go about, I guess, anything that you talked about in an urban environment.
Well, usually you can't live, I mean, everyone on the planet is surrounded, especially big cities. We have trees somewhere, everywhere. You can find them. I stayed in New York City. There actually are people I know that are guides in New York City that would take you on or just a point of just getting out. If you can get away from the busy people. But if you can't, if you're stuck inside, say you don't feel what, maybe you've tested positive for corona and you're locked down and you have a quarantine, uh, find a video on YouTube of someone walking through the woods. Download some sounds of like the wind going through the white pines. Any of that is going to bring you out of your mindset and give you the same benefits. You might not be feeling and receiving the phytoncides because you're not under a tree, but that doesn't mean that we can't uh, stay in tune with nature while being inside. Watch a nature program, Planet Earth, all the Planet Earth shows that they have now, or YouTube is great for that. I'm a famous YouTuber. I go on all the time. Not a famous one, no. This is the first time I've ever been on YouTube. I mean, I love watching it. I'm a YouTuber, period. I go on and go into so many different things. And there are a lot of great videos of maybe walking through the sequoias and watching someone do that. And a lot of the videos will be like a one person perspective where you actually feel like you're the one that's doing the walking through the woods. And that might help someone during a time when they can't come out.
Yeah, that's a really great suggestion. And I think as we're all learning, there are some pros and cons to doing things online. And maybe one pro is that you could experience a forest that you might not otherwise get to experience in real life. So that's a really cool suggestion. So we did have a question come in. Let's see. So the question is, are there specific forested environments that are more effective for overall mental health, such as a specific type of forest or one with other features like a stream or cliffside setting?
Honestly, I think I'm connected with a lot of forest therapy guides all over the world, and I think it's a personal preference. Whatever you like to be out in, it's just the point of getting out there. I know I had discussed that balsam trees do cleanse the air. A lot of evergreens do, but that doesn't mean you have to go out and specifically go find one to walk under. You know, take all your native species that are around wherever you live and just go and enjoy them, get to know them. See, maybe look them up online. That would be fun to do with children as well, and see what kind of benefits you can get. People are tapping maple trees right now to get the sap, and the birch trees to get the sap, and you know, see what kind of season each tree, what tree does in each season is what I'm trying to say. And just to get out there. I mean, that's the whole point, is just to get out there, and whatever your preference can be. It might be a water person that likes being by the water. I live here in the city of Oswego, and I've got a great huge Lake Ontario here. But I find myself more in the woods than I do by the water. So it might just be a personal preference. It's just getting yourself out and disconnecting from your everyday life is that point, because we have really, you know, we started as humans living in the woods and living outside in nature, and that's what we had to do to survive, to now being people that are just in all the time. And we're living in a society where you really, the parents need two parents to go out and have their jobs in order to raise their kids now. So everyone is inside, and people are too tired or too worried, or just don't want to do it, or don't think they have enough time to get out of their house. And I understand these constraints, but we have to make ourselves get out, because it does make us feel better, and it does make us healthier.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Yeah, so maybe it involves some experimentation on people's parts to see what kind of forest or landscape is their personal favorite for just connecting and relaxing, de-stressing.
I see people posting pictures of gorgeous forests in New Zealand, Australia, Norway, Scotland, England. But I'm here in New York State. I don't have the money to go there. So, and right now I wouldn't travel anyways. But you know, I would love to visit other forests, and maybe someday I can. But right now I'm going to go outside and utilize what we have right here in our backyard.
That's right. And I think New York State DEC is encouraging everybody to recreate locally. So, you know, rather than for us here in Oswego necessarily seeking out like a forest in the Adirondacks, how about our forest right here? And that was actually one of my questions for anyone who is local to Oswego. Do you have any particular suggestions of places to go?
Oh, good Lord. There are so many places around here. And I'm just getting back to, I kind of laughed the other day because, and I don't mind that people know this, and some people watching this know this anyways, but I live a couple streets over from the middle school trails here in the city of Oswego. I used to live right on the road the middle school was on, and I have not been on those trails in probably 15 years. And I went the other day. They're so close to me. They are so beautiful to walk on. The trees are gorgeous. They're old. It used to be an old farm. I mean, you really can get a lot, and the trails are easy. So a lot of people can go on them. They're fairly level. They've got some wider trails. There's a lot of mountain bikers. So now I'm kind of working on that because it's closer to home, so I can go and walk those and then come back and do what I need to do here. But there's Rice Creek Field Station, there's Fallbrook, there's Sterling Nature Center, there's the Great Bear, there's Beaver Lake Nature Center, or you can travel more north and walk like the Salmon River Falls, or, you know, I mean, there's just so many different places. I tend to stay a bit more local because I'm a bit lazier, and I'm doing a lot of renovating and building a tiny house this year. So I need to not spend 5 hours going for a walk. As it is, I spend about 3. So, but there are some beautiful places here.
Awesome. Yeah, those are great suggestions. And I think we're really lucky in this area to have so many natural areas within easy distance. Wendy, can you speak a little bit about any special considerations if you want to practice this in cold weather?
Well, as you know, our walk we took was in cold weather. And it was a great walk. It was difficult because young people these days think they can go out in those, oh God, my son will kill me. I think they're called joggers, runners. I don't know, the really tight pants and just these small jackets, and they think they can make it. And as you remember, I came in with snow pants on and a big jacket. And yeah, you really, if you want to walk in cold weather, and I suggest you go year round. I go year round. Nothing stops me. Ticks don't stop me. Cold weather doesn't stop me. There are ways around everything, and to be cautious. Just be aware of where you're walking, what the temperatures are going to be. I know that if I'm walking, like say the middle school trails here in the winter, it might not be as cold. But if I go to Sterling Nature Center and I'm next to the lake, it's going to be a lot colder. The wind's going to pick up. So just be very mindful of where you're walking. I always carry a large backpack. I wouldn't suggest this for everyone. This is more of a training for me. But at least carry your phone on you in case something happens, you twist an ankle, you need to reach someone. Always be aware of what trail you're on when you're walking. Whenever you go for a walk, make sure you tell someone where you're going and for about how long you think you'll be on that walk for. Just even these local trails that aren't long. Just to be on the safe side. I always know what trail I'm on. If I have to call someone and say, hey, I'm on the Orange Trail at Rice Creek Field Station, they're going to know where I'm at. If I'm at the middle school trails, I took the farmhouse trail. I'm over in that area. Then if you do need help, someone can get to you, and always make sure you're aware of the weather so you can dress appropriately. Maybe bring a small backpack. If you get too hot while you're hiking because you don't want to sweat, you'll get cold then just throw some gear in the backpack as you go. And I always have a walking stick with me as well because it helps during the rougher terrain.
Yeah, those are great suggestions. And I remember you warning us, like, dress more warmly than you would for a hike, because you're not going to be moving very fast. In fact, you're going to be pausing and staying in one place for a long period of time. So you want to make sure you're comfortable. But yeah, great. Yeah, of course, this is good for any season. Let's see, I guess to kind of wrap things up, do you have any resources to suggest for folks who are interested in learning more or finding out how they could get in touch with you, or how they could read more just about forest therapy in general?
Oh, there are so many books. If you remember the stack of books I brought to the college when we did do a walk, there are so many books and resources out there for forest therapy, forest bathing, Shindin Yoku, however you want to go about looking for it. There's tons of videos on it. And right now, a lot of the guides are doing virtual walks. I'm not one of those because I don't have the mental capacity right now to be able to switch a long video from my phone over and post it. So I'm leaving that to the professionals that deal more with technology. But I, can certainly post pictures. You can also go on the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides and Programs, and it's anft.com. And you can look, and that's more into the forest therapy, and it can explain more about that. And also there's a map that'll show you all the United States. Actually, it might even be a world map. And you can look up for a guide wherever you live. And it'll show you a guide that's close to you. If you want to reach me, I'm at pinesforus.com. That's pines number 4 us.com. And like I said, give me another week to get that back up and running. That came down, unfortunately. So now I have to get a little creative and get back in there and recreate it. But I can be reached that way. And it just, if you don't want to do it, probably the most asked question that I get as a forest therapy guide is, why do I have to pay you to go take a walk in the woods? You don't. You can go take a walk in the woods anytime you want. My job, if you want to have me there, maybe with your children, with you, with your family, with coworkers, with business partners, is just to guide you into getting out of your headspace and just taking on all that. So you don't have to worry about the time. You don't have to worry about what you're going to do. You're being led. So you're literally just coming in and letting go. And that's the whole point. And that's what a forest therapy guide helps you do. And I love doing it. And if anyone ever wants to take like a naturalist walk, that's different too. We can always do that. Or if you want to come for a hike sometime, we can do that as well when the lockdown is no more.
Well, great. I think that was a nice conclusion for all of us. So on behalf of our project and Rice Creek, Wendy, I want to thank you so much for joining us to help us celebrate Arbor Day. If anyone has questions lingering, feel free to submit a comment and we'll make sure that those get passed along to Wendy. Wendy, any last thoughts?
Just, get out there and have fun. Get out there, enjoy nature, get away from life for a while, take a couple hours and stop worrying about the coronavirus and just enjoy yourself, enjoy your family, enjoy nature. Yesterday, I just found 2 little bunnies that are right next to my house in a hole. So, nature's everywhere. It's spring. It's beautiful. See what pops up, research it online. Give yourself something different that'll keep you outside. Dress warm. Sun's not out. Who cares? Go out. If it rains a little bit, put on a raincoat. I mean, just get out there and really have fun and enjoy it. And you'll feel much better.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again. And we want to wish everybody a happy Arbor Day.
Yes. Happy Arbor Day. And thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.